Got coffee going on.
Thank you for the coffee. When you came in, I got super stoked because it gave me that memories of our first podcast when you used to bring in the Lions cold canned coffee.
Yeah.
So this is cold coffee, y'all. That's how we do in Hawaii.
So funny because like everything I do at home is like intentional. So I don't know if Joss believes it or not, but every time she asks like, oh, how come you then I'll tell her like, oh, it's because blah blah blah, and I go, reasons.
Is that because of
no? Was that
no? Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it was that the reason why I brought Lions Coffee is because it's in chapter 1.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. It definitely is. I actually call it out from the flavor too.
Yeah.
My favorite brand.
There's
flavor.
Nothing. There's no other flavor that comes close to that. I don't even know.
I
what
don't
they're
know,
doing.
man. It's like when I first came to the islands when I was in the military. I coming from Illinois.
Hey.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a thing then. I'm not sure, but I didn't know about iced coffee. Like that wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a thing, especially in Illinois where it gets cold, right? So coffee is like one of those things that warms you up, you know, and whatnot. So when I came here, I remember being on base and within the first like few months, and there was a vending machine for sodas, and then it had a can of coffee, iced coffee. And I'm like, what? Iced coffee? Like who drinks coffee cold? That must taste like cold dirt. You know what I mean? Like
the reason why you say dirt is because the story of when you first tasted coffee.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Briefly let the listeners know.
I didn't know that you could flavor it, put milk, and I was just tried it one time, and that was a disaster. But
well, it was because of your uncle. Didn't your uncle ask you to make coffee for you?
No, I think that's Tiff's story.
Oh, was that Tiff's story?
I think so.
Yeah, that might be Tiff's story.
My story was I was at some kind of like summer camp, and they were all drinking coffee, and I was like wanting to be like, hey, I'll try it with y'all. But nobody told me that it was like steaming hot.
Yeah.
And so I drank it like you would drink water, and I burned my tongue, burned my mouth. I spit it on everybody. I dropped it. It was all over the floor. It was a disaster.
Haven't touched coffee for like centuries after.
Man. And then
also trying decades? Centuries 100, right?
Yeah, centuries.
Yeah. Decades, sorry.
But just to close the loop on coffee, I bought that first can of coffee, iced coffee. It was flavored. It was a cappuccino, Royal Mills Hawaii coffee, and
Royal Mills.
And I was like, oh my gosh! In the hot sun, this cold iced coffee is so good. So from there, just venturing with coffees, man. But hazelnut, my favorite. Just having that nutty flavor, and I still love hot coffee in the morning. But yeah, and iced coffee still is a winner out here where we don't get the cold weather.
Right.
Too much. So
yeah, we're talking about the grand artists on chapter 1. Actually, we got 3: grand artist, spotter, master builder. Right?
Yeah, those are the 3 categories broken out.
The first thing, which is the grand artist, I think you mentioned you're driving down the mountains, and that's your commute to work, right? You got your Lions Coffee, inching your way. Tiptoeing was a word, I believe. But tell me about the scenery, bro.
I think the introduction to the book, and kind of reflecting off the title, Builder of All Things, I wanted to introduce immediately like what that meant to me, and I think I wanted to start off with just my experience here on the islands that I didn't have coming from Illinois, because in Illinois, Peoria, Illinois, it was flatlands. So I wasn't used to seeing mountains in the horizon. Everything's flat, and it does something to you, and when you are around that type of grandness. And it was very impactful for me. And just knowing that I'm so blessed and grateful to be able to experience that every day on the way to work, and I don't take it for granted. And so just using it as a grand example of just, being a builder, being a business owner, we build things, and I've been part of amazing opportunities and projects that are significantly big, 10,000 square foot homes, and that grandness can also carry a grand weight, and responsibility and just fear of failure and things in that matter. But just looking at the mountains on the way to work every morning just reminds me of not like how insignificant we are, but how insignificant my big problems are compared to this grand mountain, and remembering and reminding myself every morning that there's somebody greater, somebody who's built something bigger. Looking at these mountains are like, they're just so grand compared to these little houses, and so, as I go to work every morning, I smile and I look at the mountains knowing that there's a greater builder, a grand artist, let's say, that's, knows the bigger picture. If you look at somebody who's built the mountains and then kind of continue that to the galaxy, to the earth, to the distance from the sun, to just this overall design and making everything orbit and work, it just puts me at ease knowing that there's a larger picture and operation happening to my little thing that seems so big, and it helps me kind of minimize these challenges or weights that I feel, know that there's somebody else watching in there.
There's one of the things I live by, Richie, is don't make mountains out of molehills. So like with the little things, little problems, sometimes I tend to make it big than it already is, but I think shifting it into perspective, which this chapter's, this book is all about. I think this is a tangible way of doing it. It's like seeing the mountains and kind of resetting your perspective on life, and like you said, the jobs and the hardships and all of the tasks and goals that you have. It's kind of just small right now, and it's like really nothing to worry about it because someone else has this in his hands.
And that's the key. It's an experience I shared when I really was able to identify why I looked at the mountain, and it really painted it's like God used a moment in my life to paint a picture to me what he was doing by showing us the mountains every day, and why they don't move and why they stay there.
Interesting.
And so I had a project in Southern California, really hard project because of a situation of taking over somebody who originally started the project and coming in and just having to redo everything. And it was a significantly large project. And I had to be away from family, not for a full year, but like weeks at a time, every month. And, being away from, just Tiffany and my wife and just the business operation. There was just so much, so many challenges and so much weight just piling on every week as we continued, not just in the job itself, but just on the backdrop as well.
For sure.
So it was like double whammy, right? Yeah. Just like I was getting punched from the front and the back, and I was just like, and I want to say that, the journey and the destination was very successful. We completed the task. We killed it. The house was like, we landed the plane softly, and it just had all the bells and whistles. It was just an amazing project, amazing client. But during the journey of it, it was so hard. No, seriously, man, it was so hard. And then I remember one day, and this is on a mountain, right? This house, like it's in the back of a cul-de-sac is how you say that. Is its own lot. I forget how many square feet though. I think that home was like 11,000 square feet. But it was we're touching every inch of the house. I'm using subcontractors from California, so I had to do a lot of research and meetings and negotiations and bringing people in and trying not to have them upcharged because of the neighborhood and just trying to keep within a budget and a timeline and it was just it was really stressful. And because I got, the builder of all things with me, I was able not to really show that too much in the forefront, but inside and everything, happening with operations and in the back end, I'm not there full time and trying to do it from a computer late at night. And it was just a lot. So I share all that, as I was driving down at the end of a day back to the hotel from that job one day. It was one of those days, man, I just felt defeated. I felt like, it just wasn't going the way I planned that day. Yeah. I felt like not the client was disappointed in me, but he's just one of those days where he was even a little felt like the project was a little off track that day or whatever. Sure. And then there was some crazy stuff happening in the back end and the company. And then, my wife's missing me and she's sharing that. And
just a lot.
It was a lot, man.
Sounds a lot.
I felt like totally blitzed, man. And so I was just driving down the mountain and feeling it. I was feeling the weight, bro. And I just, I remember looking up, I just, all right, I'm going to pray on this house, pray on me. And I looked up and I saw the mountain. And I saw how small the house was because it's so big when you're there, right? But the house looked like this, man. And I looked at all the other little houses and I just laughed, bro. I was like, I think I say this in the book. It was like looking at scattered Skittles on a golf course. It was like, God's such a grand artist. He painted a picture for me that day that just said, look, man, look how big I am. I got you. Like the mountains became his hands, and he's like, see this house you think is so big and all this weight? He's like he's holding one little Skittle. I got you. I got you. And that's what I saw at the mountain. I just saw him grab a little Skittle and say, don't worry about your little problem. I got it. Mm-hmm. And that was the moment, man. I was like, I have a sense of reverence for the mountains because when I look at them, I feel like, the builder of all things, he's got me. He knows the bigger picture. He understands. And it just gave me a sense of rest, peace, knowing I'm on the right track and just continue course. Right. And so, that was the moment.
Only business owners will understand, fully understand that pain and all of the hardship that each business owner goes through. I'm thinking in my head like, oh, they should build mountains in Peoria then.
Man, all my Peoria family and friends, we need those mountains to look at, man. But the journey of life in Peoria was very pivotal for me too. Like I needed to not see the mountains, right. Because what that did was open a space in my mind and my spirit to dream, and so we're dreamers for sure. And we have big visions, big dreams. And the hard part is when you don't see the mountains and you do have big dreams is stepping forward and trying to make those happen, And so that's just, once you get over that hurdle though, then I think a Peoria product, once we get over that hurdle, man, we can do it. We have that oomph, that passion to finalize that dream or that vision that God gives us or he's parented us to. Right. It's just, if anybody in Peoria now is watching this, I encourage you, to get over that hurdle and do. Because you got dreams. God gave those to you. You got desires, and don't ever give up. I don't care how old you are. Just pursue the calling God's got on your life.
Some kids were told you can do anything that you want. I don't care what the resources are or what you don't or don't have. You can make a way. You can find a way. There's other kids that don't have that are boxed in because of how their environment is. But that I love that encouragement, Richie, because I think for some reason I just think it's a kid's birthright to have a good home. But obviously that's not the case with things, right?
No, and I would say this to encourage those who are listening, that if you feel like your environment isn't that place, that God allows those environments to parent us into our calling. And so if you're in that, he's preparing for you something really big, you know? And so and my example in that is my one of my best friends, DeMarco Mason. His mother was stabbed, I think 40 times by his dad. And then his dad also died at a very young age. I think he was like, but old enough. I think he was like maybe 10 when this happened. So he had no parents.
Jeez.
But he could have used that as the greatest excuse in life to not pursue dreams. And it's because of him that in high school, we used to listen to the song, You Will Know by Black Men United. And that song used to encourage us to go from a boy to a man and to chase our dreams. And we used to always listen to that, but it was him who instilled that in me to go after that. And he was the one that walked with integrity and a spirit of trying to be the best version of yourself. And he showed it to me. And what was powerful about him was that he didn't have the environment that we would dream of, right? So he had no parents. He had to go back and forth from his auntie and his grandma's. He had lived in Peoria in a poverty setting. I mean, he had everything against him, you know, but he used his environment and the little plants that grew in the sidewalk to help nourish him along the way. And he showed it. And so, unfortunately, you know, he died and got shot and killed in our city because of our environment, you know, the irony of everything. But here I am as a legacy to somebody, you know, that lived like he lived in the time he stewarded his life and lived it. And so, you know, the environment can be an excuse, or you can use it as your stepping stone to get over that hurdle, you know? And so, I've had 2 house fires growing up. I could have used that as an excuse that, you know, I'm gonna be in poverty my whole life. But, you know, God just used it more as my stepping stone in my story and my encouragement to be the best version of myself and move forward. So
you mentioned that nothing changed, except how I looked at it. Which is wild, because what you think is a tool for, you know, getting out of a situation, what you think is right to get out of a situation, it's all really up here and how you look at things, right? Yeah. Like
we chatted about the lens and perspective shifting. Well, it comes down to like, we can't always change our environment, right? There's certain things you just can't change, and you have to accept those. But there are things we can change, right? And I believe that what's going on in your mind, you have the power to, you know, just look at something differently and make that. It's a choice, you know. And so, what's so crazy is that this world just has ways of trying to manipulate our choices, and we get into this habit of following choices that we've been manipulated by.
Right.
And so my encouragement is to kind of jump into your mind and kind of look at what's happening and just being able to make, you know, hey, you know, wait a minute. My emotions right now is this, but why? How am I looking at this? Right. And so if my emotions of weight and stress and all this stuff started creating this kind of like stressful reaction out of me, I had God gave me the opportunity and spoke to me through that, looking at it differently. And it was like, oh, I just make a choice and look at it like he's showing me. And now I'm going to use that. And it just controlled my emotions. And, you know, I'm human. I can't control my emotions. That's one of the hardest things for most people in this world to manage, right? Is our emotions. But if we can just hone in on why we are feeling the way we feel, and if we agree with it, we can always shift the way we're looking at it. And so the tool is just giving you a new way to look at it. You know, there's so many different ways you can look at a situation, right? I could have looked at my situation and come up with 100 different ways of how I want to look at it. But what is the end of what we want, right? I don't want to be stressful. I want to be at peace. right? And so with what I desired was peace, I had to look at it a certain way. And God showed me how to give me peace.
I love that. As you're speaking, there's another thing that one of the values or sayings that I live by is don't react, but respond. And so what separates them two is when something is thrown at you, and this is all under the umbrella of having a perspective, right? When you react to something, that's you're letting your emotions be the one to talk, be the one to do. But when you respond, you're thinking about logic, and you're thinking about what do I do next out of with the information that I have to get to that peace, or how do I get there? And I love that. It's just like you said, you have the power. It's a choice to look at certain things, right? Certain ways. Talk to me about mountain climbing.
Before I get into mountain climbing, respond. That's really good, man. It's responding versus reacting. I think that's really, really good because I just see it all the time, with myself, with relationships, with my kids, with just employees, with friends. 100%. A lot of reacting. I mean, it's hard, right? We were just talking about this the other day.
You said we're humans, yeah.
Yeah, me and my wife and my my youngest Anuhea and her fiance Ethan. Just how easily that words can change your whole course in one day. What I mean by that is just opening up a text or somebody coming and saying something to you. And so the power of words can cause you to easily react, and so it's hard that to just grab those words, however they sneak in or get to you or whatever it is, but to be able to pause, reflect, and then respond. I think it's challenging when it hits certain buttons or chords, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's something you have to train yourself. It's not a natural thing to just be, logical about everything. But there's a word in the word. There's a word where it says, your words have the power to bring you life or death. I mean, like you said, when words hit you, it's so funny because it's small, but yet the weight of it can be huge, right? Or can be super heavy. Yeah. But again, it depends on the responder, right? Or whoever's taking it. But yeah, that's crazy words, man.
Yeah. So my hope with the book is to give you tools, that little ways of applications that will help you take different situations, words, or different things that happen in life, and being able to help you shift your perspective and respond versus react. So that's like a big portion of this book is giving you those tools, and it starts with perspective and then your perception, how you're going to see things or want to see them, and so I think, that's really the nature of the book, man.
When we're talking about a spotter and what a spotter is, for myself, the first thing I thought about was weightlifting. I didn't lift weights, but there was a point in time where my friend's a CrossFit coach, and we would go to his house and do some what do you call it, exercise, whatever it is, and he would spot me on the bench or whatever. But his role is to make sure that when something goes wrong or starts to go wrong, he comes in and he steps in to help lift me up. Normally at the end where he knows I'm about to die. That's what it seems like. He doesn't usually come in as I lift the bar off of the holder, but he comes in when he knows that I'm about to fail. Talk to me about a spotter, man.
Yeah. So going into the second section of chapter 1, I wanted to really so I played football, high school, a little bit of college, and we lift a lot of weights, right? And so part of training, and there's different kind of spotters, man.
No, different kind? What do you mean?
You have the guy who's not paying attention.
That's
you have the guy who wants to show off and do all the work, basically acting like, he's helping, but he's just showing that he could pull it up. Yeah, it's like, come on, man, I'm the one lifting. And then you have the guy who pushes you to your limits.
Hey, come on, man, the true spotter.
Yeah, the true spotter. So I know we've all gone, those who've lifted weights and had teammates with you and spotters, that's what it is. And nowadays equipment, they have, different tension things that spot for you, right? And so the whole point of the spotter in lifting weights is to maximize, your opportunity of growth in your muscle, whatever you're trying to do when you're growing, right? Because you weigh a muscle, man, I don't know all the science behind this, but the way I understand it is a muscle needs to, go through that stress in order for it to grow. So you lift weights, you have a spotter there to help you go past a limit. And what that means is you can't carry anymore, maybe a little bit, but not enough for the full weight, but he kind of helps you still bring it up, right? And then that's what a spotter is. So I wanted to really, bring that into the work world, right? As an entrepreneur, and you're asking me climbing mountains. I never actually climbed. Well, I did climb. A rock wall.
Rock wall.
Well, when I say rock wall, not like the fake kind you put on. It was a mountain wall with rocks. But that's something. I shared stories in the book, just little stories of me climbing. I liked climbing when I was young, and so. I did it a few times where, I was with my mom, my dad, and there was one in particular, though, in the book that just, it was so dumb. I forget how old I was, but I had to be like 5 or 6. I can't remember.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about your height. I was like, wait.
I was like 5 foot, 6 foot. No, I was young, man. I shouldn't have been climbing. So my father, my dad, he used to climb as a hobby. Like he had the gear, the ropes, so they would like anchor at the top of the mountain and throw the gear over, go back to the bottom and climb and do it safely, right? Nowadays on YouTube and stuff, you see these guys, man, they be climbing like he wasn't like that, right? But he did it in enough that it was there was, you had to be safe
for sure.
So and just watching your dad climb like that, and I like climbing too, right? So I knew just from my experiences of climbing before, they've always I never got hurt yet, right? So I just felt like, I'm gonna climb too. So he was climbing. I forget, he might have been 90% of the way up. I forget, I don't even remember. But I just started climbing like they were. Yeah, and I think I went up like 50 feet, man.
That's crazy.
Maybe more. And I was getting up there.
No one did no one see you?
I don't know, man, what was going on. I think because he was climbing, and I don't know.
They probably thought he was with.
I don't know if he had one of his friends or my mom. I can't remember who was there. And I'm not trying to say like, there was, I wasn't being watched, but I wasn't, obviously. And then there I was, man. I was just climbing away, looking up, and I was doing good. And then it came to a point where I looked down and I freaked out, and I just started crying like a kid would, and I'm just holding on for my life, and I probably could have kept going and would have been fine, but I think I realized how high I was. I didn't realize like I could fall and die, which I would have. Yeah, I just realized like I'm not used to being this high, right? So, it just felt scary, and my dad he heard me crying, went boom, came down like Spider-Man and grabbed me. Just did his little thing, and he grabbed me, and then they got me down to the ground, and carrying on. I still kept climbing and kept doing things, but there's this second story where I was climbing a tree, and some neighborhood kids threw something at me, and I fell down, and I actually broke my arm and went unconscious. And it was kind of one of those moments where I realized, I can get hurt from climbing. And so I shared those stories in the spotter section just to know, like, I realized something about myself, that my parents when climbing and a lot of different things in my life, they always gave me a sense of encouragement that I could do and go beyond what your regular standard of things were doing. Especially my mom. My mom used to always like just pour encouragement into me and speak life into me. And so if you're a parent out there and you have kids, man, it's powerful to constantly speak, you know, the stars and planets, and they'll land on the moon. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I really, really, really believe in my heart I could become president because of my mom, right?
Hey,
so,
shouts out to mom, man.
Yeah, so
come on.
I'm not running for president or any of that kind of stuff, but I have a belief system in me that I can do anything I put my mind to.
Let's go. That's
and so with that, though, and that encouragement and then that safety net, even climbing the wall, you know, and feeling like I could climb a 100-foot wall at 5 years old without safety gear. My dad was still there to save me, you know, and so just realizing that in life, I've always had this teaching of and this understanding of having a spotter in my life, you know, feeling like I can do things that are crazy, but always having that comfort zone, you know, of holding me. But God had to show me that without my parents around and I'm by myself, that not that I can't do these things, but there are like there are situations where I can really fall and hurt myself really badly. And so through that little sharing of stories, I share that to say that how important it is to understand having God in our lives as a spotter and not trying to navigate this world without him, because it's not always about climbing the mountain. It's about, if you fall, do you want to fall knowing your dad's there to save you and hold you, or you want to fall completely to the ground, you know, where I broke my arm and became unconscious as a 10-year-old. So that part of the story, I really wanted to connect the dots of how important it is to have a spotter there. And what I mean by that is just the builder of all things, God himself, you know, just having him with you in your journeys of life and your journey of business and your journey of things. And it's okay to have that feeling like you can do anything you put your mind to, but
confidence,
that confidence to just go out and do, but knowing that you got to do it with him there, you know. And so we're human, you know, and there are days we're going to fall, you know, and not, you know, you've gone on hikes, you know, you're climbing up certain trails and you slip and fall sometimes. There's a rock there you didn't see or a root, and so that's just part of the journey. But you know, just knowing you have a spotter there, even more so, I know I can get to the end and get there correctly. So
there's a we talked about off camera, but there's one part of your book where it says I think you don't, what was the word, like the spotter, you don't realize how the spotter works in some ways sometimes, because it's not going to look like what you think looks like spotting, right? We talked off camera about just kind of my situation at home where the builder of all things just kind of showed up in ways that I just never expected it to be. Where we were supposed to be on a negative, he brought us even more than what we should have owed, or you know what I mean, which is a spotter for us in that situation. I was given the opportunity to speak at our church a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about intimacy, and to have an intimacy with your father or God. My intimacy, there was a portion where I talked about what intimacy looked like, and it looked like dependency on the Father. And there's a verse where it says, it says, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only see what his Father is doing. For you to see your dad climbing the wall, you're like, hey, I can do that too. Like he's doing it. He knows what's going on. And I say that because, you know, when something goes wrong in your life, knowing that the spotter is there, he's done it before. And we talked about this. We have the receipts. He's done it. He's spotted us before. He can do it again. He's gonna do it again. So like knowing that he has our back, even in the most like crucial situations, like that's our dad, like, or that's my dad. He knows how to climb. He's been at the top. He knows how to get there. He knows what resources it takes, or he knows all the crevices of the rock, the wall. He knows the quickest way to get to me, and he knows how he can do it. And like you said, he just like when you were crying, he heard your cry, and just like Spider-Man swooped in.
Yeah, and you nailed it, man. It's like he used my true parents to show me his parenting.
Yeah.
You know, and so you nailed it, man. It's God, you know, it's like that encouragement through life. He gives me that confidence to just go. And so I want to just encourage entrepreneurs. I want to encourage business owners. Like, if you start with the foundation of knowing God is there as your spotter, you know, you're going to climb that mountain and he's got you. So the thing of why I really wanted to like talk about the spotter is when you have that third spotter I was talking about, the one that really wants you to grow in your strength. And so when you're pushing the weights, man, and you do 12 reps, come back, do 12 reps, but you're at that very heavy weight, you know, that's beyond what you actually can really hit. And all of a sudden you're just pushing and you got 3 more reps, right? And you start shaking and you're just feeling life's weight on you and you're just pushing and, you know, you got bills to pay and you got, you know, people calling, you got, you know, your spouse, your partners, like not understanding decisions you're making, or, you know, you're just feeling all this weight pushing against you, and you just want to do everything you can to get it up, and you're just pushing and pushing, and then your car breaks down, and then, you know, just like, and you just can't, and it's coming, and it's starting to go towards your chest, and the weight of this bench press is starting to press on you. But guess what? The spotter is holding it, but he's allowing you to feel this pressure. He's allowing it, but he's not going to let it crush you. And he's just holding it. And you're just like, man, I got 3 more reps, you know, like, you know, and then finally, what does a true spotter do? He goes, come on, man. Come on, push. And he's telling you and he's encouraging you now, like, I got you. Remember, I'm here. And for me, I know the spotter's there. So I'm still pushing. I'm not giving up because I know his hands are pushing. I could feel it. And all of a sudden I'm going numb, but I feel it going up still. And I'm still shaking and my body's getting numb, but I know it's going up. And all of a sudden I get it up. And then he's like, all right, we got 2 more. But what happened was I was pushed beyond my limits. I didn't collapse. I didn't fall. I didn't crush. And I'm about to grow.
Let's go.
My muscles just got stronger. And if you ever lift weights, or if you did the bench press and you go through that, and every day, month goes by, 2 months. What was once 250 became 300 pounds. What was once 300 pounds became 350. What was once 350 became 400. And you just start becoming a beast. And not only is the weight numbers going up, but your chest is starting to grow. You know, you're starting to build up. And then what's happening now is, like, when people saw you as this skinny looking dude, now I see you as this rock looking dude. You mean, even your presence is a light to people. Not saying that our physical presence in the physical world, we want to look big, but what I'm saying is, when you're growing with God and your muscles are getting stronger, even your physical light is shining, you know? And so the growth isn't necessarily about strength. It's also about your light getting brighter and brighter and brighter, because you're so forth, your walk with God is getting stronger. Your faith is getting stronger. The way you're operating, the way decisions you're making, and the things that you're doing, people are starting to see this. Yeah. And so that's all because of the spotter and because of me. If it wasn't for the spotter, I wouldn't be able to get from 250 to 300. I wouldn't have been able to get to 300 to 350. I would still be just doing 300, maybe get to 305 on my own strength, right? But because of the spotter and the things we go through and overcoming them with him there and trusting that he's there to push even harder, we grow at that pace. So
you can come in a business and entrepreneurship with some, level of faith, but can you kind of talk me through it about what your how it went about?
You mean the birth of
ATN?
ATN, of our construction company. The birth of ATN. So the Builder of All Things book is the journey from beginning to, I think, about 2022 or so. I want to call it our first 12 years.
First 12.
Yeah. So I wanted to really share semi-chronologically through the book from the beginning. So it felt as if you're walking with me in that journey and how I was walking with God during that journey. Yeah. So part of chapter 1, I wanted to introduce to the readers that the beginning of the construction company, my first and Tiffany's first entrepreneurial journey, our first company that we launched, and wanted to share, that foundation. And so All Things New was birthed from just, I think it's just a lifetime of, when I say lifetime, I mean just the years of my life before, a whole life of God preparing us for that day of, knowing and going and starting our company. And now 12, 13, 14 years later on what we're about to do now. All of it's part of this big path and journey. And so, when that day came, I mean, we didn't have like a desire or I don't know how to really articulate it, but we didn't think, oh, let's start a business. What should we start?
Intentional.
It wasn't intentional at all. It was just like a lifetime of things that happened from, being a quarterback of a football team, the camaraderie, to going to college, to going to the Navy, and then going back home, and then trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, and then starting construction and being introduced to it at 24, 25 years old, and then joining a apprenticeship program, and then being at an amazing company for 6 years is, construction, how that tied into my football roots and military camaraderie. I felt like it all connected dots, and to a point where I got laid off. And then here I am in this barren season and trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden, it's like things started happening. And so if I were to like speak into starting ATN, our construction company, or to other people who are on their entrepreneurial journey, I would say that there is a path, there is a stream in your life that God is operating in and keeping you within those boundaries. And if we could pay attention to what I want to use the word flow, there's a flow. So if you think of a stream usually it has a high point and a low point. And so there's a flow naturally happening from mountains or different, streams. So there's a flow always happening. It's always going one direction, obviously, or then it would be just sitting there and stagnant. Right. So there's a flow, and there's a flow in life. And if we can tap into that, just basically paying attention to the flow happening in our life. What are the things in life? How did God basically guide us in that flow, and knowing, just looking back at those things I just shared, why would he make me quarterback? Why would he put me in the Navy administration? All these dots started connecting, and God allowed these different people in my life and there's a flow happening. And so if you pay attention to that, and in God's stream and his flow, there's fruitfulness. And there's scripture to back that up, but there's fruitfulness in this flow. So if you pay attention to the fruit and to where the things are not dying, but living, and because when you force your own flow, you're going against the stream, and therefore causes
friction and
and pressure, and there's a lot of things. So if you could just follow the flow, and now if I'm going to bring this to like real life, tangible things, it's like when I'm at church and I don't know what my next job is, and then this guy comes over and hey, you looking for, your mom says you're looking for work, you look like 6'2", I'm like 6'3". You're a big kid, you ever thought about doing construction? I go, I don't know. Like, he's like, you ever thought about being a carpenter? I was like, I don't set carpet, I didn't even know what a carpenter was. So, but that was, hey, I'll give it a try. But that was a stream moment. That was a flow moment. That was, I didn't realize it. And then when I jump in, I realized, like looking back, the foreman was like, hey, you're really good at this. I'm going to put you up here to do this. And then I was like, the growth started happening, the fruitfulness started happening. And so then I go to my, construction company, and there was a flow happening in fruitfulness. And so when you can pay attention to those and stop going against the flow to do what you want to do and what God wants you to do, it's easier flow, and doors start opening and things start happening. And that's what I started noticing in things. And so a day came and that flow was there. Yeah, I got laid off, but there was another flow happening. And I realized that what I thought was a stream, it took a turn, but it's the same stream.
Sure.
But this is where the fruit was. And so the fruit at that time was basically I got a phone call from, it started with a guy that I kind of knew, from my wife, and his name, I don't know if I should say his name, but he called me one day out of the blue and just like, hey man, I want to bless you with some tools. And I was like, I was like 70% carpenter apprentice still, just lost my job. I still needed tools is my whole point of sharing that. Like anything I can get, yeah, man, tools are very valuable in my trade. I'll take them. Yeah. I appreciate that, man. Yeah. And so he's like, yeah, he gave me the address to go there and go check them out. So I took my green little truck over there, and still laid off at the time, by the way. But, I'm like, man, I could take a skill saw or whatever I can get, right? And so I pull up to the warehouse, and he's like, yeah, he started laughing, looking at my truck. He's like, man, you're going to need a bigger truck. And I was like, what? Like, is this a table saw that I can't get in there? Like, so he opens up the warehouse door, and we go in, and this pretty big warehouse has about 3 stories high, has all these shelves, all these different tools. Like it was just like a contractor's, general contractor's warehouse, right? And so I was like, all right, cool. So we walked in, and I seen like there's this one table with some tools on it, and I was like, oh, that's it. So I was already looking like, like, hey, that's not bad. I'll take it's like a hammer and like a sawzall and some stuff. And I was like, oh man, I was pretty excited. Yeah. And he was like, all right. He was like, all of this. And I was like, huh? He's like, he was like, see these shelves? I need to empty these by Friday. And then I just had this like overwhelming feeling come over me. Like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Like, and he was like, yeah, man, all these are yours. And it was like shelves. I'm talking like not one skill saw, 7. It wasn't one table saw. It was like 3. It was like 3 cement mixers. It was like 4 wheelbarrows. It was like, just shelves and shelves of tools. It was like, and he's like, yeah, man, you're a contractor overnight. And I was just like, wow. I started tearing up and crying a little bit. And I was like, why are you giving me all this? He was like, look, man, I've been a contractor my whole life. I hurt my back really bad. I feel called to go on the missions with God, and just do photography. I'm done. And my father-in-law needs me to get these tools out. And I don't want to waste time trying to sell these, man. I want to just bless you. And you're the one that came to my mind. And I was like, I don't even know where to take these. Like, I don't have a warehouse to take your warehouse too, So he was just like, I was like, all right. So I got on the phone with my 2 brother-in-laws, and we figured it out. We split 3 ways where I just threw a whole bunch of tools at his house, threw a whole bunch of tools at his house, a whole bunch at mine. And that was like, I think the moment I felt the stream, boom, shift. I felt it. It was like, boom, something's happening. This is different from me waiting on my call to go back to a 9 to 5. Right. I knew it. I knew it. I felt it. I was like, something's, and this was the moment in my life I started really serving God too, and really trying to change my way of walking too. I'm serving full time at the church. I'm like already on fire for God, and just like, okay, God, what are you doing? So first thing I did was go to my church, and I was like, hey guys, I told my story of the tools just like I just told, and I was like, I'm ready to do whatever you guys want. I want to serve the church. And then they were like, oh man, that's awesome. So a week went by, 2 weeks, called and said, hey, is there anything I can do? And they were like, yeah, we do have something. Can you put this chair rail up? And I was like,
light work.
I was like,
no, like some real work, guys.
I was like, this can't be it. This can't be it. So I left my heart open. Like, God, what do you want to do with this? Like, what is this? And I still didn't think like, go start my own company or anything. So, just to move on, my brother-in-law, who I just threw all the tools at his house, just happened to be at the same time that he just bought a new house. And he needed to, it was like run down. It was
fixer-upper type.
Big time fixer-upper, in Waianae. And so myself, my wife, my kids, him and my brother-in-law, everyone came together and we used these tools and anything we could, and we just remodeled his whole house. Nice. And so all sweat equity, all family love, and just blessed him. And he took care of like all the materials. I can't forget if he actually paid me. If he did, thank you. If not, God is so good. But I think in that moment, I remember thinking, man, I can do this. I don't, like, we can do this on our own. Yeah. Like, really help people, And there was another situation that happened where a burden started kicking in, and there's the guy who blessed me with the tools called and said there was this fireman who, just got scammed by a contractor, stolen $70,000 of down payment, some demo money, and just demoed the whole interior. Now this guy's kids, wife, paying for rent and mortgage at the same time, and just freaking out, and lost all his, half of his savings on what they were spending on this remodel. And so, the guy who gave me the tools was there full time trying to get him, called me because now I have all his tools. And so here I come with my team. And I think that story and that burden I felt that day, and then what I did with my brother-in-law is like two things. It's like, okay, something's happened. Now this I feel, like I felt a weight of a burden of like somebody's getting taken advantage of in this market. And then I really started paying attention to the market. I started going on Craigslist. Y'all remember Craigslist back in the day? That's how these guys get the scams. Because back then you go to Craigslist, try to look for a handyman or a builder. And so there was just guys going on there scamming, act like they knew what they're doing. And that's when it started coming together, man. I was like, if I were to speak to entrepreneurs right now, or owners of business owners, or people that desire to jump into business, if the stream is there and things are starting to line, you have to pay attention to a need. You have to pay attention to a burden, and know that if you're stepping into that need or that burden, I'm going to encourage you to step in with the builder of all things. And so the reason is going back to the spotter, is like, if you jump into a need or a burden or trying to fill an area and you feel like you're being successful, there are going to be ups and downs in those journeys, and you're going to need the builder of all things there. So understanding that, we were blessed with the opportunity to pray and put it before God and say, hey, is this burden for us to carry? Are we going to inject ourselves into this market? And so after prayer, after confirmations and certain things, God, gave us that green light and thumbs up to say, hey, I'm going to be with you. And I encourage you guys to start your first company called All Things New. And that's how it started, man. I mean, there's a lot more there, but to unpack that part was me and my wife paying attention to the dots being connected in the flow up to the point of making that decision to serve a need. And it's been fruitful, and that's what my advice is to like pay attention to the fruit. And what I mean is not that at Sack and Save, like when you're walking through the fruit aisle, but the fruit meaning that, when things are happening and are blessed, or doors are opening, or, there's a positive flow movement. Positive meaning moving flow movement. And so, that would be my encouragement, is pay attention to those things. Pay attention to where you came from, and all the things that God, those blessed things, like why are you athletic, or why are you super smart? Why are you certain things? And why are you not? Why are you not these things? And so don't try to force against the flow. Pay attention to what God has equipped you with and ready, and don't ignore those. Some of us are supposed to be super moms, you know, some of us are supposed to be scientists. Some of us are supposed to be teachers.
Yep.
Some of us are supposed to be athletes. Some of us are supposed to be authors. Some of us are supposed to be rappers. Some of us are supposed to, these things God has carried and equipped and started a flow in our lives to become. Pay attention to those.
There's an idea of minimal gear in the book. And I resonated with that because in the book, in chapter 1, you mentioned, you know, some of us think we need the right gear to start, or and I put in my notes there, don't be convinced that you need the right gear or the best gear to start. You just gotta go. And it seems like that's what happened with you guys. It's just you went and followed your calling, and the spotter just showed up out of nowhere and give you a bunch of equipment. Like, you don't need the best. I'll give you what you need. And that really resonated because I'm coming from the videography world and photography side. And in my mind, and this is kind of like where my flaws are, hopefully aren't anymore, but I used to want the best gear first to do a project.
Wow.
Versus just starting the idea. You know what I mean? And that crippled me for so long because, you know, you end up getting the best gear or the ideal, what you thought was ideal equipment, and then you're still not motivated to do it. It was rough. It's rough.
Yeah. So, no, I'm glad that you shared that, Ray. That's it. You nailed it. It's, you know, starting. There's a rule of thumb in construction as an apprentice, and that is buy one tool a week.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And so what that promotes or produces is for you to have resources, meaning paycheck by paycheck, pay and buy what you can afford as you can afford it. But even more, I personally chose to buy one tool a week, but I would choose my tool based on what I needed as I went. And so what I hated doing was asking to borrow tools.
Oh, that's the worst.
That's the worst. But but what I learned is that once I knew I needed the tool, I'd buy it. And I would and then I would spend a week learning how to use it. And then I'd go buy the next tool and be excited about it and learn how to use it. But what was happening through that process was I was becoming really skilled at each tool because I wasn't overwhelmed by having everything.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And so it is a mindset, right? That we can't jump into entrepreneurship or starting a business or doing things if we don't have all the things we need, right? But my encouragement is, you know, and just going through this with experience, it is definitely, this is probably like irresponsible advice, but to just go, right? And I say irresponsible because you have to go, but you have to go with the spotter.
Yes.
You know, so for example, like if I climb the wall and just go, I mean, that's great experience for me, but I knew I had my dad there.
Yeah.
You know, so I had this comfort, even though I wasn't thinking, oh, my dad will grab me. I was thinking, I knew he was there, you know? And so there's a story in the Bible with Peter that, you know, he was in a boat one time and Jesus had told them to go off, and then all the disciples were out in the boat, they're out in the sea, and all of a sudden Jesus appears. There's a little bit of a rain or storm happening. I don't know if it's a little bit, I wasn't there, but there was some kind of storm happening. And Jesus actually has an invitation for Peter to come out and walk on the water with them. And Jesus is actually standing out there on water. And so Peter steps out and actually walks on water. But I think the only reason he stepped out is because he knew Jesus was there.
Come on.
Can you imagine like him trying to walk on water to show the other guys like, hey, let's start a company like this and just step out on water? No, he would have fell straight down. But because Jesus was there, number one, but number two, the invitation was there. I think those are very important for us before we start climbing the wall, right? And so not to be irresponsible and say, hey, you should just go. You definitely got to make sure that your spotter's there and the invitation's there. And if the invitation's there, game on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Game on. Don't worry about the gear, because Peter had no gear.
Yeah.
Zero when he stepped out. There was nothing there to protect him from falling.
No floaties, guys.
No, nothing. So, you know, when I look at me and Tiffany starting our first company, ATN, we had I mean, we didn't have a warehouse. We didn't have company vehicles. We didn't have any administration programs. We didn't have money. We had zero money. Let's just make that clear. I had zero. I was laid off. Unemployment at 66% of your natural pay was coming in. So we're already suffering down 33.33%. And so it was already hard times. And for us to even consider going into a business was just like Peter stepping out on water. That doesn't make sense. Like, but if Jesus is there and the builder of all things is out there and he gives you the call and you feel it and it's pulling and everything's aligning and there's a flow, there's a moment when you realize those things are right there. You step out. Yeah. And so that's what we did. We stepped out. And, my encouragement is like any business that comes around, same with the tools, and the rule of thumb is like, situations, if we knew all the things and had all the things, we wouldn't have gone through, certain hurdles and certain storms of our own, but we never would even had the hurdle or the storm to face if we never even stepped out. So, it was part of that spotting growth of knowing, okay, we're learning what programs to use. Okay, now we master that program. And now, I didn't know we had to do this administratively. Okay, boom, we got to do this. And so, I didn't know we should save this much for taxes, boom. Okay, we're going to put this in place. It's smarter to have multiple bank accounts, not just one. So we started naming our bank accounts for different, areas of splitting that out. I didn't realize we should have multiple project managers, I didn't realize we should have somebody hire and get the phone. So we just started buying one tool at a time in the metaphorical way of speaking, but we just started learning okay, if we're walking out in water with the builder of all things, it's that faith that's keeping us standing and that learning, right? And then any time that we did lose focus or inexperience of walking on water, just wasn't there. Yeah, the same story. Peter sank, but as soon as he sank, he knew who he can call on, and he'd called, and immediately, the Bible in the word scripture, it says immediately. Immediately. Let me say it one more time. Immediately means not a second went by before the builder of all things grabbed his hand. And even more so, I feel like the fact that Peter had an opportunity to even cry for help showed that he wasn't bubbling yet. And what I mean is there's a level of water where your head and your mouth go under. He didn't bubble yet and trying to scrape. He actually was still clear and was able to articulate, can you help me? So that means his mouth was still above the water. And that means when immediately came, he saved Peter before Peter's mouth went under, just like a spotter. Just like a spotter, when I was explaining that weight coming against your chest, at that moment where you feel like you're going to break, the spotter grabs you immediately and pulls it up. And so my encouragement to somebody who wants to jump into this world of entrepreneurship, yes, if you have the spotter, builder of all things there, and he's calling you, go, and he's got you. And you'll learn along the way. You'll have, step out with the minimal gear. There's stories of Moses called to his mountain, he's like, to go face the Pharaoh, and all he had was a rod. That was his minimal gear. He was like, he even told God, he was like, hey man, I don't know what do I say? He said, don't worry about what to say. I'll provide that. Hey, just go. And then you got Joseph who, had to face the Pharaoh coming out of prison and explain a dream to, and that's all he had was just dream interpretations. And then all of a sudden he became second in command of all Pharaoh. And then you have, David and Goliath, he had a moment where he had to go face Goliath, his mountain, right? And so all he had was this little rock, and now he became king and ruler of the land, one of the greatest warriors of biblical times. So, these stories are great examples that don't worry about the gear, man. Worry, if you have any, if I don't know if worry is the right word, but your direction is the builder of all things there? And is he calling you? And if so, let's go. There's this street or location called Tantalus where you can drive up to, and when you go up there, it is up on the mountain. You get to see, all the cityscapes, right, of the skyscrapers and buildings of Honolulu. And so as a builder, I remember just doing projects on the rooftop of some of those with some cell sites and doing remodels in some of those buildings and how small those are. But when you go up to a place like Tantalus and you look and you see the whole sky beauty, you see the mountains, you see the cities and their grandness. You realize that every little piece that we have is part of a bigger picture, a bigger painting, right? And so the builder of all things is knowing that there's a bigger picture, a bigger reason, a bigger purpose, and being okay with that. But also allowing that understanding and invitation into your positioning, understanding I'm taking something in this bigger world, this little thing, even if I'm like the owner of OpenAI or Tesla, is still very small compared to the universe and the things happening. Even if I'm Elon Musk creating SpaceX or whatever it's called to go to Mars, even as grand as that seems, that's so insignificantly small compared to the grandness of our universe and the bigger picture of operations of things and how the earth equally spins so we can survive, not to freeze or to burn to death on the exact distance from the sun. And so there's just so much grandness. And so, there's a scripture in the Bible, Hebrews, I think 3:4, that says, we're builders of things, but there's a builder of all things, and so what that helps me position myself is to take this thing, this product, this business, this service, and knowing that there's a bigger picture and purpose, and to fulfill that, knowing I want to steward it to the best of my ability. And it's like, if I'm a captain of a ship in the Navy and I have a ship, I have people on the ship, I have enemies that could come, I have waves that could come, I have storms, I have so many different things. I got to sit on the bridge and look through the glass and make sure I monitor at all times in my team and make sure I'm taking care, I'm stewarding this ship. But there's a Navy who has aerial digital views of everything, and who's a military that's watching over everything way past what I can see. And so the builder of all things is kind of the military Navy on the bigger sense of the bigger picture, the bigger plans, the bigger mission, my job is to steward the ship and follow that GPS and to fulfill my part into the bigger picture, the bigger war, the bigger defense, whatever that is. And so that's what business ownership is to me, is to steward the people within my arena, to steward the resources within my arena, to steward my ship and the elements within it, and everything I can to the best of my ability to stay on that course so I can make sure I fulfill the bigger plan. Because if we could imagine, if there's a bigger plan in the military sense and I'm wanting to do my own thing and not trusting the bigger picture, I actually can decourse, go off and potentially put my whole ship, my people on the ship, and everyone at risk. But not only could I sink our ship or decourse and, whatever that may happen in a bad sense, but in the bigger picture, I might not have been in a pivotal part that I should have been that helped us win a war. Right. And so
interesting.
There's such a bigger picture you got to, think of. And so as an owner, it's almost like practice what you preach. So if you think about your employees or even further, don't you want them to kind of steward their positions, their things, and so they can fulfill the bigger picture? So as a captain, I remember he used to always give us a little bit of vision, telling us what we're doing, what's coming ahead. And it is how important it was for us all to do our little duties, because our little jobs, and he didn't use the word little, but it may feel little compared to a captain, but he always made it feel like a big deal, because if we didn't, the ship would not operate the way it's supposed to stay on course. And so he always gave us that encouragement, how important we were, even if it felt like we weren't. And each part is very important. So as a business owner, to translate that to even your team is so important, because because stewardship, if they see you as a steward of a bigger picture, they also will follow suit and steward their position so we could stay on course. So it's a big operation of things, man. And so when you ask about, the builder of all things and the grand scheme of things, it's a position of the heart and knowing that and being okay with there's a bigger picture and we're serving it.